Well, it's funny when you guys ask me about coming and to do this, you start reflecting back on the community. And I have lived here all my life. I was born and raised here, and lucky enough, my kids and grandkids now doing the same. But there's just so much that as you did as a kid, and reflecting back, and some of the things that I didn't even think of, but then I see my aunt and uncle that were here before us who lived next door. Um, so it's just the community side of things. Seeing back when I was a kid, I lived close to the Commons, and that was really the center of the town as it's known. But that's, you walked or you rode your bike, and that's where we hung out. Yeah, the basketball courts, the hanging around the Commons in that area. I did work. By the time I was 8 or 9 years old, we didn't have any family that had any farm of that, but I did actually. I used to ride my bike when I was about 9 or 10, and go to Franlot Farm, and I called it working with them. They probably figured I was a pain in the ass being in the way, but actually worked on the farm and helped them hang and milking the cows and that type of stuff. But I mean, otherwise, it was a tight community that just stayed right around this area. I mean, we didn't take off on vacation or any type of stuff like that. So what I knew was the community, and you certainly didn't have a cell phone to pick up or text somebody. You called on the phone, and it was kind of a ritual thing, either after school or on the weekends, hang out at the tennis courts or the baseball field. And I guess my parents probably hope not to get in trouble from there, but anyways. Yeah, so I was lucky enough. My grandfather was a fisherman, and pretty center of what happened at Secundit Point. So during the summertime, I spent a lot of time down there with the fishermen in the morning, and that side of it. Wasn't much of one to go to the beach or hang out, still not really that type. But between the center of town or the Secundit Point area, my father had a plumbing business. So I actually started working with my father when I was 11, and just kind of, that's what I knew. Weekends, nights, that stuff, working what was then, the family business.
But eventually you became the chief of police. So how did that all begin?
Didn't begin very well, I can tell you. So just by hanging around, got to know some of the officers that were on the department. I was actually working for my father at the time. And the meaning of not going well was I took a real interest to something that was exciting to do, as opposed to, 15, 16, 17 years old, doing plumbing, and sort of stayed in contact with them. When I turned 19, they actually said, we got positions open. Would you be interested? So I worked weekends, holidays, sort of a ride-along program with them at that time. And then actually I got on the police department at the age of 20.
And how long were you on the force?
27 years.
How long were you chief?
The last 10 years. So I retired in 2014. I became chief in 2004. We actually, while I was a patrol officer, we brought the DARE program to town, which was one of the first steps. And I see a lot of the kids around that at the time that I was an officer, and that was what community relations, community policing, those types of things. So I was lucky enough to be chosen as the one to get trained as the DARE officer and got to work in the schools. So programs like that, obviously, breaking down the barriers of kids to talk to officers and those types of things. I think it served me well, future years, and ending up in the role of, chief of police. But yeah, for the community, certainly being on the police department, never mind the chief of police, you learn all the things that are going on in the town. But I think one of the things that we always did at that time, and I think they still do, is keep it realistic that, we are a community here. We watch out for each other. Everybody's business, everything that goes on doesn't have to be everybody's business. And I think a small town police department has to keep that in mind. I think we've done that well. And I, certainly enjoyed serving. It was only for other opportunities that I ended up leaving, or I probably would still be here.
How unique is that, Sid, in today's age, having a chief from the town?
Well, I think you guys know well when you just look at the department now and realize that there's nobody even on the force from town, or there's a couple of guys. When I was on the department, everybody was from town. And if you're from town, you have an interest in the town, you go walking into a restaurant or the store, you're going to see somebody that's from the town. And I think that keeps you grounded. It kept me grounded, because we talk about everybody knowing everybody's business. But, I had kids that were growing up. They were kids. They got into plenty of trouble and doing things. But, realizing that my kids were no different than other kids, and, me as a parent was no different than somebody else being a parent. It was just the fact that I was the chief of police, and, sometimes you have to do what you do. That's not what you find nowadays. It's part of it's, tough to afford property in town. That's a piece of it. And the other is, our community, it's tough to find somebody that wants to stay on the department long term.
So speaking of other things in the community, you're part of the game club.
Ooh, I would say that I probably was 13 or 14 years old. Didn't actually join the club as a member until I was probably 23 or 4. But it was a place that we used to go, and we would meet up to go pheasant hunting, duck hunting, coon hunting at night, raccoons and stuff like that. So again, it was another one of those places. It was something to do. So I knew of the club. We would meet up there. They would have events once in a while. And then, like I say, I probably joined the club when I was 24 or 5 years old. Currently, I'm still just a member. I'm not on I guess I am on the board of directors, but I don't hold the president's spot or something like that. And it's still something that's, for the community, we do 3-4 events per year. They've gotten quite big, quite frankly. But it's, it's not going down the list of what goes on in town, sort of some of the last stuff that's community oriented and providing for the community.
I don't know if you can speak about it, but I know there was like a historic moment for the police department 30 years ago with the largest seizure.
It's a great story. And I on a side note, and I don't know if he would do it, but if you sat down with Ron Coffey, he was the investigator. He's what brought it about. I know even at one time they had a script that they were writing up to do as a movie. It would make a great movie. And it's just crazy how it actually happened. But what happened in town was there was 2 gentlemen who actually bought a video store over in Westport. So right across from the high school, there was a video there. Now it's like Friends Heating or something that's there. And at the time they had bought the property for cash. Right, but what happened was when they bought the property in Westport for cash, it raised the eyebrow of a realtor, and a realtor had spoken about it to the police that something was not right about it, didn't feel right. Then they found they had bought a property in Little Compton and it also paid at that time a couple $100,000 for a piece of property, and they started looking into them. And long story short, they figured out that they were 2 Pakistanians who were captains on freighters. And the freighters, besides the legal load they had in there, they were filling them with hashish. And they were bringing the hashish into different locations. None of it actually came into Little Compton. It came into, there's actually a crazy picture 4th of July of the Coast Guard waving to the guys as they bring in a boat right into Narragansett, and it's full of hashish. One of the things that they learned from that was police officers are a creature of habits, and that being holidays, Christmas, Thanksgiving, those types of things, they want to spend it with their family. They're not usually out on the road. And that's when they were doing a lot of their deliveries or, transporting it into the off the boats and in. And that case actually still, I believe, is the largest seizure to ever happen. And there was never an ounce of drugs that were seized. So it was all a historical case. They put it together, what they had done. And it was actually, they got the wife to flip on one of the two brothers. And I was on the department at the time, there was a mob hit for them to come down, and they came down and they were going to kill the wife in the house. And the department, along with Chief Hawes at the time, was waiting for them when they came in. It was and it happened very quickly. Wouldn't be the way you would do things today, I can tell you that. But it's just a crazy case, crazy case how that went. I mean, and at that time, 1987, 88, 89, seizures of 400 million, those types of things. So our seizure or our share of it, of the seizure, was approximately $3 million. And I believe that our operating budget for the department at that time was $275,000. So, I mean, it was a windfall. It actually changed the rules on how they do asset forfeiture now, because we actually received that in a bank account to the town. Now the process is the federal government holds it. You buy something, you have to go to them for a reimbursement. So it really did. It changed the rules on how that's done. Right, so it paid for half the facility. So one of the things is it had to go towards drug education, which is actually when we started the DARE program. But it also has to go towards supplanting the budget, right? So you can't have, if you were buying, gas for the cruisers, you couldn't go out and buy the gas for the cruisers. If you put another cruiser on the road as an extra, you could put gas in that car, right? So it was, you couldn't replace what the budget was meant to do. But up until, I want to say maybe 3 years ago, we never bought a cruiser in town. It always was paid for by the drug forfeiture money, which I think now is pretty much gone. Back around 2005, having been on the department and seeing certain things that had kind of gone away, one of them was the forecastle at that time down at Secana Point. And I saw where people were coming all the time to go down and get fritters and chowder and that type of thing. And I got this crazy idea to buy a food truck, which we eventually had at South Shore Beach, called the Sandy Clam. But it was seeing a void, seeing the fact that that people were coming and wanted to do something. So I was all set. I was going to do a food truck at Secana Point. Then realized, well, there's some crowd there, but there's a lot more crowd at the beach. So we got permission to actually go down on the beach. At that time, there was just hot dogs during the day, and we did a Thursday, Friday, Saturdays of fresh seafood. I knew a gentleman that worked for DEM and brokered fish and scallops and that type of seafood stuff. So I got talking to him, and so he would always have my fresh supply to bring it in. So we did that for about 4 years. Sold it, probably with a nudge from my wife that that was enough. My parents, the staple of my family on a Friday night was to go to Manchester's restaurant, right? And obviously it had burnt down by then, 2006, I think it might have burnt, 2005. And so good friends of ours, Steve and Katie Madden, we were sitting around the table one day and got talking, and we said, geez, wouldn't it be nice to build back Abraham Manchester's? So long story short, I knew Betty, who owned the property, went and talked to her, told her we wanted to build it back. 2 weeks later, we ended up buying what was the Barn Restaurant, without, obviously, Abraham Manchester, but it's the property where it sits. And then eventually we ended up buying the house that was out front. But we did it as a common goal to build Abraham Manchester's. That was 2008, and it was our 5-year plan to have Manchester's done. So Somehow it just hasn't worked. Life goes on and doing things. Love to still be able to do it. But that was the sitting around the table, having a couple of beers, and said, we'd hate to see it go somewhere. We thought we could make something of it and go from there. Like I said, the big plan of, going from there. So
So yeah, the big question is, when is
when's Abraham Manchester's coming back, right? So, yeah, we've been lucky to do a lot of things, and we bought Wilbur's store and all the property up there for a purpose to move Secondant Plumbing, which was my father's business, and David is now running. So that kind of threw a wrinkle in things time-wise. But boy, it's not off the table, let's say that. So we'll see.
The village isn't complete.
I know. Yeah.
There's still a hole in the village.
There is. I remember when this building was Stonebridge Dishes. When I came in, and I came for your when you guys had the comedy night one here, and just seeing the pallets in the bar sitting here to do something. I mean, quite frankly, if you build it, they will come. I mean, we're just dying to have something that happen in town. Hopefully things work out. It flounders again, get something back. But even that, we used to have 7 local establishments, and they were always busy. So we'll see. When we bought it, I have a calendar every day since the day we bought it, and we put the number of how many people we've served. And one of our big achievements was about 5 years ago, 6 years ago, and we broke the 40,000 per year on serving. And when we bought it, there were days that there were 10, 12, 15 people, in doing it. And I think a big part of it was families. Our families worked there. We were there, and try to keep things consistent, and so it's proof if you put out a good product, the people will come, and we've been lucky to do that. So I've been privileged in the sense of having opportunities, and when I got on the police department and the opportunities that I was given at that time by my chief at the time, Bert Hawes. I went to school for lie detection. I'm an expert in lie detection. I got to work with cases all over the Northeast, which led into now my position eventually where I'm, with the police chiefs and working with all the agencies, state and federal, in the state. So it's given me that ability to see outside, and I can tell you, reflecting back, nowhere I go is like Little Compton now. It really is, and just special areas within the town, like the village. You guys with the parade, right? I mean, it's stuff like that other places it's not even thought of to do something like that. But keeping the creativity about how to keep the history of the town going. I remember, not like Caroline or some of the folks that you had in here or will have in here. So the 350th, the 350th is coming up now, right? So when they did the last one, I can remember being on Meeting House Lane with the parade coming through at, Boddington Plumbing right next to the Ponderosa and that type of stuff. So, you hope our grandkids get to see that and recognize that and hopefully carry on the tradition, so.